that they added to Pokemon Unite. So here's the skinny on Greedent. Spent the weekend trying to figure him out, because that's kind of what wound up happening. And what happened with Greedent is kind of the opposite of what happened with Mamoswine. I was really excited about Mamoswine, and I played him a whole bunch, and then I realized he has some problems. Greedent, I wasn't really sure about him, and it took a while to get used to him, and now I think he's absolutely ridiculous, and I love him for it. He's not going to join my mainstream of Pokemon Unite characters anytime soon, but I mean, he is fun to pick up every once in a while. So here's the deal. His whole thing relies on this, which is his passive ability. He basically drops a berry either every time he uses an ability or every third hit on something. And the berries heal him. And they also power a lot of his other abilities. The berries will also heal your allies, or enemies. Yeah, enemies can pick them up too. They heal for 60 plus 2% of the maximum health. It affects Greedent differently than it does everybody else, but for everybody else it's just 60 plus 2% max HP. The berries are more for him than they are for anybody else, but he does throw berries on the field that everybody can grab. Now, some people have said that this is a bug that the enemies can grab them, but here's the thing. If the enemies can't grab them, what's the use of having them out there? This is the most interesting part of his whole thing, is the fact that he actually can heal his enemies if you're not careful. Granted, he's not healing them for a lot, but you don't want to be throwing your berries around willy-nilly. So that's sort of the big drawback of Greedent, is the fact that, yeah, you can heal your enemies if you don't pick up your berries. Go figure. Yeah, he gets either Stuffed Cheeks or Covet. Stuffed Cheeks is the one where you see in his little trailer where he throws like 4 or 5 of them out, and then you run and pick them up. Now, that's beneficial in that, you know, you gain HP from grabbing all of those, but which you're going to do anyway. Anything that you grab during that time also adds a shield, which is nice, and it boosts movement speed a little bit when that happens. But otherwise, you just threw 5 berries on the field, and now you gotta go get them to power up your other abilities. So, Stuffed Cheeks is the one that they show off in the trailer. Stuffed Cheeks is not the one that you want to use. The one you want to use is Covet, because Greedent basically becomes unstoppable, gets a movement speed boost, drops berries on a consistent basis directly in front of him, so that he continuously keeps picking up the berries, and he also interrupts and deals damage to anybody that he runs into. On top of that, any of your other abilities that use the berries, hint hint, you can use while you're using Covet. So, the only downside to Covet is the fact that he's a little unwieldy. It's like he can't take a sharp turn very well. And then his other abilities are the ones that actually utilize the berries. So Bullet Seed becomes more powerful. Basically it's like a machine gun. It shoots more seeds when you have more berries in your consumption. So it's good to have a nice full stack of berries before you start shooting that off. Belch does the same amount of damage, but the cooldown is reduced based on how many berries you have. So if you have a full set, you basically get to use it twice. Belch is a little harder to use than Bullet Seed, because even though Belch is an area of effect, it has a delay. So you'll activate it, and then you have to wait a second, and then it goes off. So it's really, really powerful once it finally goes off. But it takes a minute. So a lot of the times I'll use Bullet Seed, even though Bullet Seed slows you down a little bit while you're using it. You can still move around. It also gets a little unwieldy though. Because you're basically sitting there in this little machine gun, except the machine gun only has a range that's like 2 times his. Like it shows it on this picture right here. The range is not very far. I mean, it's basically the same range as this. It's just not an AoE. Now you might be wondering, well, all of that sounds great. What's the downside? The downside is, 1, you can heal your enemies with your berries. 2, you have very little HP to start off with. So I guess at lower levels he's actually not that bad as a tank. It's just once you start getting higher, he starts getting worse at it. The big difference, though, is that Greedent likes to be in your face. He's a physical attacker. All of his attacks are mostly melee, with the exception of, like we saw, Bullet Seed, which is not very far, and Belch, which is also not very far. So he's a melee character, primarily. In comparison to all the other defenders, he's not one I would really want as a solo defender. I've played him as a solo defender, and I've played alongside people who that was the only defender we had, and it worked okay. So he can do it. I just wouldn't recommend it. Basically, if you want to know what his playstyle is compared to the other ones, if Blastoise is basically keep everybody out of the goal, Mamoswine is basically keep off my friends, Crustle is basically stay away from me, Greedent is just be a giant pesky nuisance. Is basically all he's good at, because Belch has a slow on it. That's about the only thing he really has going on. He can interrupt with Covet, and that's about it. So really all he's good at doing is doing a fairly decent amount of damage at people, and if they're not really paying you a whole lot of attention, they're gonna die. Is basically what it boils down to. He's really easy to underestimate because he doesn't take damage very well. So he winds up getting squashed if anybody focus fires him. But if they don't bother to focus fire him, they just try to ignore him, he'll probably take out a teammate or two before the rest of his team shows up. But yeah, I think he's lots of fun. I think he is. It's really interesting that they went with this berry thing. To be honest, it shows that they're willing to play around with how things interact in this game. So I really like that they did that. Will admit that he's probably not for everybody. And now that I know his stats a little more, I might actually play him more often. I haven't played him in ranked at all. I played him primarily in regular matches and the new Halloween match. So